Hello and welcome one and all to Roll to Cast. This is the Season 6, the Blood-Soaked Rose, post-season conjunction.
Conjunction, baby!
This is our end-of-season wrap-up. I am Phil. I was the GM this season, and I am joined by...
Hi, I'm Ellen, and I played The Witcher Eve of Hirch, or I can't still do the accent, it's been too long. Eve of Hirch.
There we go.
Close enough.
Eve of Hirch. You'll get into it over the course of the episode, I'm sure.
I am and will always be Sean, and I played the lovable mage Aurelius Tarnell.
Lovable, yes.
Is anyone lovable?
Not even
of which-
lovable. It's Chris Bond playing Brioc. You know, a lovable merchant.
Chris Bond is lovable.
Chris Bond is maybe lovable. Brioc is definitely lovable, right?
I don't know if it's wise. I don't know if it's wise to love him.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
The lovable elven merchant. This is,
Yeah, that's
becomes
right.
very
That's
important to the
right.
season.
Yes,
What?
yes.
He's an elf?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I'm just finding this out.
Yeah.
So what is this? This is our end of season wrap up. If this is your first season of Rollcast, well, welcome.
Thank you very much for listening to an entire season.
Yeah. We've got a bunch of other seasons out there for you to go back and listen to, and hopefully many more in front. But what we do is we get together at the end of the season, we have a bit of a catch up, we talk about our favourite moments, and we reflect on the season, and we answer questions that our community and our fans have asked us on our community Discord.
So many questions this time round.
Yeah,
Yes.
tons.
Y'all are curious.
Yeah.
Thank you for sending them through, because we love answering questions. We just love to hear ourselves talk. It's kind of way we
Been
got
doing it
into
for a very long
podcasting.
time.
So Discord and Twitter is
And Twitter.
largely where we get the majority of our questions from. Occasionally we get people from YouTube as well.
Yeah.
And
That's
sometimes on
right.
the street.
Yeah.
Hey, you.
Hey, you.
What'd you think of The Witcher?
It's just like it's a reflection, is it not?
Yes.
It's just a nice way to
Yes.
look back in the season that was.
Just a bit of a debrief, please.
A little cool down. Before we dive into all of that, though, just take a moment to say a big thank you to all of our patrons who make the show possible. If you'd like to support the show as well, you can go to patreon.com/rolltocast. There are lots of benefits over and above helping us make the show and fund all the different bits and pieces that go into making it, including joining the community, the
Patreon-only side of the Discord,
Thank
where you
you.
get
There we go.
you get to vote on special little things we do, and also you just have a direct ear into our souls.
There you go. That's
Yes.
our,
You know how there's an ear
that's our
into your
brand
soul.
officer at work.
Thank
There you
you.
go.
Thank
Don't worry,
you.
I got
Saved
you.
me from my brain fart.
I got you, fam.
If you can't support us on Patreon, the best thing you can do is share it on the social media. We appreciate that a lot. So thank you to everyone who supports us by doing that.
Absolutely.
You know what? I have a question that I want to go right off the bat for
whoa,
you, Phil.
whoa.
Because you know what? This is like a bit of payback, because you got the first question on me in Ambrosia Island. I want to give
Okay.
you the first question.
I did leap on that, didn't I?
Sean, before you ask your question, I have a question. In this
Can you
episode, are we going to release to the public the next season?
Oh yes, absolutely.
So just as a heads up, if you're first time to this season, if this is your first season, we're going to tell you what the next season is in this episode.
But you got to listen right to the
gotta
end.
wait till
Don't skip to the end.
You won't know where it is.
Yeah.
You can't do that on a podcast.
you don't know if it's going to be at the end. It could be now,
It's
but
not.
it's not. So Phil,
Great.
Yes.
my first question to you: why The Witcher? Like honestly, like why did you decide to choose The Witcher, and what gravitates you towards The Witcher and that world?
Well, The Witcher is it's got a bit of cultural cachet at the moment. I won't lie, that's part of it.
Yeah.
You like
It's
Henry
big at the
Cavill in
moment.
tight pants.
Look, I was super excited about Henry Cavill in tight pants. Who wouldn't be?
Yeah.
I love the TV show. I know the second season had a bit of a mixed reception. I loved it.
Oh, I loved it.
yeah.
I had a good time.
Yeah, I love the video games. I haven't read the books personally, but the world is very fascinating. It fits the games that I've done so far. Ones that are dark, gritty, have very heavy consequences and kind of complex grey themes. That's the thing I like to explore.
You're
where-
also just our RTG guy as well.
Yeah, that's right. It's in
Yeah.
a system that runs on Interlock, which is the same system the two Cyberpunk games we've run on. So it wasn't too much of a stretch for me there. And so it's just exciting to have all those things come together. And I formed a pretty good idea for a story for it, and it just kind of ran from there.
I will say you probably have the best grasp of European accents. Of the,
Yes.
of all
What
of
do you
us.
mean?
European and UK accents.
accents.
Yeah, mine become Irish, all of them. So it's a
Why?
worry.
I didn't
I
have
keep
an Irish, did I?
doing
You should've.
Werner Herzog, and
right.
that's it.
If we'd have gone one door to the right, that's where the Irish person would have been.
That's it.
I can do a bit of an Irish. I
That's good.
could perhaps have
Ooh.
squeezed one in there.
Go
But
Northern Irish.
Northern Irish.
There
Well,
you
I
go.
could have done that. Paddy Ashton.
We
Northern.
can't have subtitles as it's only audio.
Because I guess that also like brings me up to like the second part of the question is, because you always...
Oh my God, there's 2 parts?
I know, right? I'm just coming
Whoa.
hard and fast.
Whoa.
Especially when we did Cyberpunk Red, you had a very good grasp on what the story was going to be. Like, you pumped that story out fucking quick.
Yeah.
What was kind of like the impulse for this particular story?
Chris is stroking his chin.
Phil, you created a setting, a world where our 3 principal characters were locked down in a lockdown of some sort.
Oh, yeah.
Unable to leave a destination.
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
Where political machinations way above their pay grade were kind of dictating what was happening to their circumstance.
Sorry, it's not ringing a bell.
No, I don't know what you're getting at.
No,
Not sure you're
Did
getting
that
at.
enter your brain at all? That you
No,
were doing
not
a
really.
lockdown?
So
I think it might have influenced you.
I think I've said this before, and it's basically how I approach most RPG writing is I wait for the characters to come, and then hello, and then I kind of build from there what kind of story they fit into. And so I think Aurelius's character was actually a couple of points in Aurelius's story were the kind of the driver for it. So you had this very clear idea that you wanted an adversary that you were chasing down.
Yeah.
And so from there I was like, okay, well, if we have this adversary, how are we going to what if we cornered her? What if that was the idea? And that kind of spawned this idea of trapping you in a city and then making it kind of dire and desperate and cold, kind of built on top of that. And yeah, the kind of Elven rebellion also kind of just came out of the circumstances.
Yeah.
Great having all of the, the rising tension just confined in one place, because then it just ramps up and up and up and up and no one can leave.
I mean, actually, Rosine probably could leave at any time she wants because, portals.
Yeah.
But she has a reason to be there. She has a mission, so that kind of kept her in place. Thankfully.
There you go. I asked the shit I wanted to ask.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Portals kind of ruin things sometimes.
No, you're just not thinking with them.
I gotta think
Portal
with
did
it.
it.
You gotta think with portals.
They're unsteady.
Yeah.
Is this just ask Phil questions?
Those are 2 things that I just very much were keen to know about.
Well, should we jump
cool.
into, before we answer our questions from our lovely audience, shall we go around and select some favourite moments of the season?
Oh,
It's a
yeah.
great idea, yeah.
Yeah.
Well volunteered.
Oh, great. Very good. Oh, dear.
Mine was when I won the game.
Yeah, that's right. When I made a broken character and slipped it by fit. No, I'm joking. I'm really joking there. Definitely joking.
He's not.
I don't know. My favorite moment definitely would be, I think, very early on. Very early on, we were accosted by the guards at the gate.
Once we got inside,
once
when you
we
had
got
the verbal
inside.
conflict.
Once we got inside, and there was
Yes.
a verbal conflict, and there was a
Yes.
verbal combat that we sort of stepped into from a system point of view.
Yeah.
And I rolled garbage. I rolled
Yeah.
like crit one. I'm like, this is what my character's supposed to be doing. I'm supposed to be talking my way out of this situation. This sucks. But then we had the mage just go, nah, magic.
Nah.
Yeah.
And that was a great moment for me because I was like, oh, that's the setting. Mages just fucking win sometimes.
Yes.
They're just like, hey, get fucked.
Yeah, you're now understanding the problem with the Spitfire wax dynamic. I was like, I spend so long, and you're like, net run.
Yeah.
Like, well, cool, I guess.
Now run.
Fuck me.
I think mages are supposed to be that powerful. They're supposed to be specialized, but they're also supposed to be fucking scary. And so
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
was a cool moment where, here's this little elf guy being like, hey, excuse me, please, I'm going to talk my way. And it's just like, no, get out of the way.
We
Stop
hate you.
No, and more than that, the mage just to go, this is an irrelevant, boring conversation to me. Stop having it. We have better things to do. Stop
Why did I
trying-
not do this 10 minutes ago?
Yeah, this is just get out the way. This is minor deity sort, like I'm a minor deity, get out of the way peasant sort
Yeah.
of stuff.
Yeah.
And it was a really cool moment. It was setting appropriate.
Ellen, let's hear from you.
There was a really interesting back and forth, I think, with even Brioc. It was kind of like a missed communications of not understanding how the other works, of why you bowing to Aurelius why this kind of false sense of not friendship, but like servitude, really, and that not being communicated well on Eve's part, and it not being understood on Brioc's part. I feel like this has been the first season to have a character who cannot really communicate that well.
Yeah.
Which kind of
It's a different character for you as well in that
kills me a
regard.
little bit because I like to talk out my feelings.
It's a very different character for you. I definitely know that Brioc understood what you were communicating.
Right, yeah.
But I knew that you were playing a Witcher, and they have famously like trained low empathy. And so that
Blunted emotions.
emotions and that
Yeah.
sort of thing. So steering into that was useful, and also just to kind of no sell it, just to be like, I don't get what you mean.
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Yeah.
I'm not doing that. It was a good moment, and I think furthered the Witcher character.
Yeah, like it showed how fraught these times are for everyone in the universe. Yes, it is the thing of like mages and witches and what have you can kind of go through worlds in different spheres of power, but really everyone's fucked in the end. Like everyone's a slave to kind of like this basic lack of being able to reach over to one another.
Yeah, that's kind of our Blood-Soaked Rose like shirt that we'll make is everyone's fucked in the end.
Everyone's
That's
fucked
basically
in
the
the
theme
end.
of the season.
Yeah, no, it doesn't matter,
I think our shirt is "Hello, friend" or something.
Hello, friend.
Yeah.
My friend, my good friend.
Yeah, my
with a knife in hovering
yeah.
just moments away.
I think for myself, I was trying to think of like moments for Aurelius. And there was a bit on my character sheet that I was trying to figure out, when am I going to be able to use this? Can I use this? And will it be the right time to use it? And that was the Hydramancy Ritual. And that was also a particular moment where I had a fun bit of kind of to and fro with you, Phil, where I'm notoriously shit at describing things in grand detail, and that's when you come in and fill in the blanks. So it's like I say what it is that I'm doing, and then you embellished it further, and then I would say this, and then you would embellish more, and then to have it have a narrative, like it has a narrative thrust associated with it. It was like, okay, cool. That's what gets us from Act 2 to Act 3.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it had such like, and I was good. I was like, good. This is exactly what I wanted to use it for. And I waited as like it was an end game thing.
Yeah.
And so it had such like a good payoff for myself personally as a player. I went, cool. I started that correctly.
Yes.
And it's just a nice little like feather in my cap to be like, oh, and it just turned out perfectly. And just to have the come hither, and
Yes.
just the
Yeah.
drama
Yeah.
of it.
And that drawback is one of the reasons you don't just immediately leap to using it, right? So
Yeah.
it feels right that it's like, well, why didn't you just Hydramancy from the beginning? Is because there's the risk, which is entailed, is she looks back and sees you, and then
two-way
she
mirror.
knows that you're coming.
That's
right?
it.
Yeah.
Or it just might not work. And the thing
Yeah.
is,
Yeah,
you
it
can
doesn't
only
necessarily
do
work.
it once.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
Like it was like I had to factor it into my starting gold
Yeah.
to get all that shit. And it's so expensive.
Yeah.
It's super expensive.
Yeah.
As
those
The Witcher
components.
knows.
Oh, I couldn't afford half of the things that I needed for like the starting gold that you have is very low.
Yeah, if you're a Witcher, but
Yeah.
a mage and a merchant, we're rolling in it.
I rolled,
Good for you.
I rolled for my starting gold and got the max
Yeah,
amount.
you
And even
did.
that, I was
Yeah.
like, barely got what I
Yeah.
wanted.
I think it's really interesting that some of the most strong characters have the littlest gold.
Yeah.
and it's like it's a really interesting.
Yeah.
system.
It's a scrappy mechanic. Like,
Yeah.
we talked a little bit to Cody about, how that mechanic kind of goes into the game, but it's a really long creation period, kind of so that you care about your character and like
Yeah.
you care about the mechanics of this world and how it feels to be a character living and breathing and walking around and not having resources to do things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not usually one for resource tracking. I sometimes find it bogs down, but this being like a deprived siege environment, it was kind of necessary
Yeah.
to like tax your resources and keep track of them.
That's part of the tension as well.
And that was that, that was the thing for Brioc. Is like you've got these powerful characters. His power was in his ability and his reserves of money, of having stuff to spend. That made him extremely valuable in this situation.
Can I business?
Can I business?
Can I business? Yes, you can.
Phil, did you do your favorite
I
moment?
didn't. So
Which one of us is your favorite?
No, Daddy doesn't play favorites.
He does. We're just not allowed to know.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But that's like normal parents.
Yeah, that's right.
Eve dying changed the game.
Yes.
It was such a game changer, you know? And it just put me in such a kind of new territory of like, okay, well, what happens now? You can't plan for every eventuality when you write a campaign, and you make kind of funnels and things basically to kind of push people narratively towards the end. That wasn't really in any of my plans, and it kind of shortcut a couple of ways to get to Rosine. So yeah, that was exciting and really kind of upped the stakes both in the story and for me as a storyteller. So yeah, for me that was a big moment. And then just a minor moment would have been Peggy. Just Peggy.
Just Peggy.
I just love Peggy. She's a great character.
Yeah.
I loved playing her. She's super minor, but she just had a little bit of texture to the world that I just really enjoyed.
I think it's super important though, because you do see those moments of beauty and kindness in The Witcher underneath all the shit.
Yeah.
Underneath all the muck and blood.
You got to
and
really
grime.
wait for it though.
Yeah, but it's like that's the thing, you know. It's you grabbing these moments of peace and calm and life and love before life throws another heaping pile of shit and chaos upon you.
It's a world of contradictions. You look at
Yeah.
Geralt. Geralt doesn't get involved.
What a liar!
Quote,
What a
unquote.
fucking liar! The most involved man in
But
the
he
conjunction.
But he always gets involved
Yes.
for
The greater good.
as good as he can do.
Yes.
Right? And
Yeah.
that's the contrast. Now, we've got so many questions.
Yeah.
I think
I've got
Yeah.
them
I
right
we should
here.
just- dive into it?
just get into them.
Oh yes, that's it. That's
And
it.
we'll talk more about the characters and stuff as
through
we
the
It'll
questions.
come-
Through the
yeah,
questions,
it'll
right?
come.
So here's a little fun thing. In terms of how we're going to structure the questions, if you're a part of our Discord and you're chatting away on the Discord, you get first dibs here.
Yeah.
We're reading from the Discord first, so
Yep.
we are going to discuss the Discord right now.
Links in the
Boo. Nah, I love
description
it.
if you want
Yeah.
to join.
Links in the description if you want to join.
So I'm not going to start with a Sean question because that just feels a bit.
No, do it. No, do
can.
it.
No,
You
I'm
can
going
do
to go
it.
with this one.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, Phil. This is from Role Playing Grenade. With a lethal system like The Witcher, are you ever tempted to pull punches in a one-shot like this to keep everyone at the table? Having a PC die halfway through the arc surely isn't ideal, and you have stated how the Catachan and Rosine had great stats. Was that danger purposeful to the story?
Yes and yes. No, sorry. No and yes.
Yeah.
No, I'm never tempted to pull punches. I never pull punches at the rolls cast table. Won't do it. Never will. All the rolls are open. I don't play with a GM screen here. In something that's a more casual table and something like D&D, Sean knows this full
I
well.
got a very, very generous battle with you once.
He got about 6 fudged rolls to survive that one. It
was great.
It was fine.
I felt good.
But not here. Not at this table. The dice fall where they may, and that's it. Did I pick powerful enemies? Yes. Yes, I did. I wanted it to be dangerous. I still think, and I've always maintained, that the party could have overcome both of those obstacles.
Yeah, had
And
two
they
of the
did it-
3 party members been
Had
in the
they
fight.
worked
Yeah.
together.
So it ended up just Eve one-on-oneing. Eve got very unlucky with her rolls, unfortunately, as well. The mage couldn't cast. It was a 1 in 4 whether he would turn that night. So that was, again, it was a roll of the dice.
But you thought that I would take the collar off, you thought I wasn't going to shackle myself.
Yes, that's what I thought you might do. I thought you might take it off, cast some spells before you turned, or just be a werewolf and use
Just
that
be
to
a
win.
werewolf.
And then Brioc is, I think he was, see, he's a very complex character. I thought he was maybe conflicted because the Catachan was there to defend his people. That's why he didn't take the shots initially. Otherwise, with their support, I think they could have killed the Catachan. And then Rosine was very powerful because she's the big bad. She has
Yeah.
to be threatening. Yes, it's a little difficult when someone dies halfway through the campaign, but them's the breaks.
It's happened
There's
before.
precedent for
Yeah,
it.
we've had it before.
Usually, it's good overall for the story.
It's
Yeah.
around similar time, I think. Oh, hang on.
Not quite. I was actually talking to my partner about this, who has a question coming up later on. Hey, cutie. That's a one-on-one message that
Disgusting.
a whole bunch of people have listened to. Anyway, Eve's death happens at the end of Act 1. Bob's death happens at the beginning of Act 2.
Yes, it's very
And
slightly
so tonally, it shifts going into Act 2 as opposed to moving through Act 2. Act 2, it becomes an entirely different story based on the kind of paranoia and fear of two characters not trusting each other. That's how Eve dies. Whereas in going mainstream, Bob's death highlights the significant stakes. Whereas in this...
Bob deliberately went off on his own as
And
well.
Bob went off on his own. Whereas in this game, we're like, yeah, we know the stakes. So, yeah, I think they're different enough that they have a huge impact going, particularly towards the end.
I do also like that kind of parallel or that juxtaposition of in going mainstream, a person purposely chooses to go off on their own, and in The Witcher, a person gets forced on their own.
Yeah, a person is betrayed
Yeah.
to be on their own, effectively.
Yeah. The early part of the story is very combat light. There's nothing happens basically in terms of combat.
Yes.
Lots happens. So I felt like if we were going to build to a monster fight, we were going to build to something, it had to be significant.
Had to
Yeah.
be big.
So I picked something that I thought was at the upper end of what you could take on.
So speaking of monsters and monster hunters, this question comes from Cafeteal. I don't know if y'all talk about this ever, but what was Eve's deal? Was there a fun, torturous past that had come back to bite her? Or was she walking the path and kind of along for Aurelius's ride?
Yeah, Sean, you and I talked about this because
did.
we
It's
decided
backstory.
to interlink our backstories,
Yes.
as is a fun thing to do at the Rollcast table to make sure that the characters have some stakes in being involved in each other's lives. So I rolled all of my life path things, as I always do. There was an instance in Eve's life where she regretted not slaying a monster, or not slaying a mage.
And I had conversely rolled that there was a point where a Witcher owes me something.
Yes, and I figured it was because it was roughly around the period of Eve's life where she was actually trying to gain some empathy around the world, that she didn't kill a mage, was kind of like, I'll let you off on a warning, get the fuck out or I will kill you. Then comes back to that town realizing that the mage has left havoc in her wake, and then dealing with these new feelings of guilt and whatnot, makes an oath to kind of redeem herself in some way.
Yeah.
Owing it to Aurelius, not that he even knew.
No, Aurelius knew nothing of this, and that
No.
was something that didn't get touched upon. But it's just a little thing we have in our back pocket if it's a thread that could have been pulled on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Maybe if you'd have survived.
And it allows for story moments, like having those justified character chats. I love the fact that Eve as a Witcher learnt some empathy and then got punished for it.
Yeah, it's a super tragic story. It's I'm not gonna lie, it made me real sad. It was such a contradicting amount of roles as well for her life path, where, you know, it was kind of like it was from a really vicious school of witchery. However, it was a witchery school that, like, not known for neutrality, known for being assassins. However, one of them was like broke neutrality, and I'm like, what the fuck? What the fuck does that mean? So I had to like kind of create this idea of a character. And when I was rolling for where is your character now, it was kind of like trying to live a normal life, and I was like, oh, I don't know if that works. But
How
then
does one do that?
yeah, but it's kind of like, you know, is that more tragic for a story to have a kind of person trying to be on the
straight and narrow.
narrow, essentially, and it's
whatever
like,
Witcher's
you know,
version of that is.
Yeah.
yeah, you son of a bitch. Now every time I get pulled back in again.
Yeah. And it would have been something
yeah.
for me to pull on later.
Yes.
Like if she had made it in front of Rosine, there's that confrontation, the same thing that she tried to do with
pitch.
them. The pitch.
Yeah.
The pitch to Eve is kind of different because Eve has the skin in the game of like, I should have killed you.
Speaking of backstories, Chris, you have a bit of a backstory in TTRPGs going back well away, and you are very adept at system.
Yes.
You love looking at systems and
Yes.
the way that they kind of work with one another.
Yes.
So I want to, this isn't directly pitched at you, but I want to pitch it at you.
Okay.
Kendrix23 says, and I'm just changing Fusion to Interlock for the purposes of this question.
Yeah.
Having first-hand experience with it in both genres, how well does the Interlock system mesh with the fantasy setting of The Witcher compared to the sci-fi dystopia of Cyberpunk?
I would say very well. I think it's like the Warhammer fantasy setting.
Dark Heresy, you're thinking of?
No.
Warhammer
The
Fantasy?
fantasy TTRPG system has a very brutal system as well. It's similar to Dark Heresy.
Yeah.
I personally am a big fan of brutal systems that punish characters. I don't play kind of aspirational characters. I play kind of like morality characters, like more cautionary tales, or like ways to reflect on the human condition in a character. So by like pushing them to the extreme, you can reflect on them. I think this is a really interesting system because the premise of it says that attacking and defending are fundamentally dangerous propositions to both participants.
Yes.
Right? As we saw in the game, you can roll a 1 on defending and have it end up worse.
Yeah.
Hurting you. Yeah.
Hurting you. So the idea of engaging yourself in combat, getting the first strike is really, really significant. I think that tells this story, and particularly in The Witcher, very, very well. They're not going to want to dive headlong in, right? It's not... You're not all playing witches, right? Because if you were, you would be, what's the famous thing in the books? Pirouetting all the time.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Semicircles.
Semicircles, pirouettes. You would use a sword in the Griffin style or the...
Oh, God, I wrote a whole bunch of these down, yeah.
Right, I think
get into it.
I think it's
The
the Griffin
fiery
style.
dancer,
exactly,
in
right.
Elvish, whatever that is.
I need this for Luke because Luke is our fan. Twirling
Twirling
towards
towards
freedom.
freedom, and monster hunting, and that I think would be a very different system. The fact that you're playing many of the kind of mortal characters, the bystanders, the participants, whether choosing to be involved or not, choosing to deliberately be involved or not, in this game means that the game has to be brutal, means that life can be snuffed out in an instant, and that even choosing to defend yourself is a dangerous choice. So the push from a system perspective into the narrative is, hey, do everything you can to avoid combat, which is good because it encourages people to fucking roll over and give you whatever you want.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, I actually don't want to defend myself because it could end up worse for me. So I'm going to give you the gold. I'm going to hand it over.
Yeah.
I don't want to fight.
To answer the question about like how do the settings go with the system?
Yeah, the cyberpunk to the fantasy.
To build on what Chris has said, both of those worlds and this kind of flavor of fantasy world, they are brutal, dangerous worlds with heavy consequences, right?
Yeah.
And the interlock system fumbles on a 1, crits on a 10. It's pretty common.
You've got to...
Yeah, so often actually.
It's very, very swingy because on a D20, there's, half as much chance you're going to hit that critical,
Yeah.
right? And even in most D20 systems, crits are, hey, you do a bit more damage. Whereas crits in this, they explode. In The Witcher, criticals, these differences between scores grow into these terrible wounds and awful injuries. In 2020, guns are just extremely lethal. And you can just die in a round and any shot can stun you. Something they softened in red.
Yeah.
Which makes red and interlock don't work as well together. Because it's a very swingy game that's like anything can happen at any time, but red has a lot more
forgiving.
It has more cushioning between you and death. So you have higher hit point totals, more effective armor, and cover is better. So there's less of... There's still the criticals keep that kind of juiciness or the risk in there, but they don't quite mesh as well, because I think my answer is that the best thing that Interlock does well is sudden and terrible consequences.
Now there's a shirt.
I'd say that red using the interlock system makes it a more hopeful game, which is in tone with its setting.
Yeah.
So I'd say it uses it pretty well, but it's all different strokes for different folks.
That's right. I didn't say it's a complete mismatch.
No. Yeah.
Okay, well, roll for initiative, the two of you.
Yeah. That's fine. See if Brioc can take out the TM.
Just handle it like players and fight across the table.
Okay, you can be Brioc. I'm 20 knackers.
Brioc will win.
Wait, we're just becoming Into the Woods. Just take out the narrator.
There you go.
Hey.
Oh, wow. What would that game be like? Someone write it.
So this is from Hurricane Hawk. Well, I'll go ahead and ask. When did you decide that Aurelius effectively had nothing to live for? Was it always that his obsession with his whole reason for being, or was it an in-the-moment thing once it was done? Absolutely was the long game from the inception of the characters. I kind of made it clear in episode 0 that he's been doing this shit for 30 years with the sole purpose of finding this one person. And the one time that he gets close enough to do any sort of damage, he gets a terrible curse from it. And that doesn't deter him. And that's a fundamental truth about Aurelius, is that basically he can see as far as Rosine. He's never been able to see beyond Rosine, but he had no illusions around the fact that there probably is nothing beyond Rosine. And that's where I kind of pushed to have that moment with Flavio, I believe his name was. The man of the night.
The sex worker.
Sex worker.
It's to kind of show what an Aurelius may look like beyond that. And just seeing a tired, beaten down man who knows that this is probably his last night. So it is something that I knew from the beginning. I didn't know if, to use acting terminology, it was his super objective. To find out what Rosine's answer was, whether it was the truth or not, and then take her down.
Aurelius ain't old either for a mage.
No.
He's like 40. That's
he was like mid-40s, but he's been at this since he was 10.
10.
So he basically had the body of a 60-year-old, right? Like he's a beaten down, weathered man who knows nothing beyond the chase.
Who's been carrying a curse
Yeah.
for a long time as well now and hiding it from people.
And so I never knew whether it was something that would be, like, I didn't know how it was going to end. I obviously knew that there was a big possibility he dies, but also I was looking at the possibility that he succeeds in his goal, and then the joy is seeing what happens beyond that.
Yeah, I mean, to my imagination, he has like a long, dark night of the soul where he doesn't know what the hell he's supposed to do anymore. He doesn't know what his place is. And, maybe disappears off the map into the bottle for 20 years or something.
Or just
Who
Thanos,
knows?
Or just Thanos is it. Finds a nice countryside place to just not do anything
Makes
for the rest
a nice
of his life.
stew.
Yeah. Okay, let's tick that one off the list here. We're rollicking through them.
These are great questions, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you.
There's plenty more.
Just because we've touched on this a little bit, but I think this is worth going into just because it's, you know what? No, you're a Twitter question. You can wait.
The hierarchy.
This is from Slowpoke.
Okay.
Slowpoke,
Hey,
here you go.
Slowpoke. How you doing?
Slowpoke, have you been tempted by the idea of getting other players to do NPC voices? What's the thinking process behind whether to do that or not?
Phil often just does it.
I freaking love doing NPCs and doing voices for them. I love both preparing NPCs and having them thrust upon me by player decisions and just having to make them up. It's part of the joy of being a GM for me is just to jump into someone's shoes for a moment and see what they want and see how they respond to people. Like
The people in the cave in Mystery Down Under,
Well, I
a
was
lot of
going
them
to
were
say,
Phil.
like, Phil just jumped in and did it. I was like, yay.
I mean, I like the guards who refuse. As we were talking about that moment earlier, when Briot tries to charm them, and they're just horrible and racist towards him and make fun of him. It's fun to just jump into those people, right? But I think the main reason that we don't have guests in to do NPCs is it's just too hard. We record these in sort of intense batches in the room where we can look over the top of our mics directly in each other's eyes, use that very present, in the moment acting. And there's lots of people we'd love to collaborate with, but we'd have to get them to Adelaide for 8-hour days.
Yeah, because
we don't want
to record like remotely. It's just not the way we do it.
Or we'd have to take something that we'd done previously and probably get people to re-record that. Or we just have to have a real clear vision on what an NPC would say prior. It's around this table that Rollcast is made and formed, and that's why I think there's a real spontaneity, but also it's live performance that is happening in front of you, which trying to translate through someone like doing either post or or they do a pre-recording.
Well,
and
the
then,
closest we've come is with you, Ellen.
What do you mean?
With send her down, Huey.
We did. We have had an NPC.
Yeah, that was technically.
Yeah, I guess.
Technically, that is one example.
It's
of that.
It's an in-universe recording in Mystery Down Under, so no one had to interact with it, thankfully. But
that was a pre-recorded NPC.
Yeah.
Basically. And then Chris has the story, which I think we've told before.
I think we have, but I'll tell it again.
Yeah.
For those of you that haven't listened to the Vampire season, which is season 2, I intended to have Sean's character's sire, the person who turned him into a vampire, Taylor, to be played by a good friend of mine. The trouble was, this friend of mine, Stuart, he couldn't wait 6 or 8 hours just to give up a day, right? Just to hang out near the studio.
Jeez.
Right? Just to wait for his moment.
Yeah.
He would have done a fantastic job. He would have been guided through the scene by me, and he would have smashed it out of the park. But the logistics of it mean that if, for instance, Sean wants to call that character up the following day and talk to him,
Then we have to wait.
Well, shit. Then I got to get Stuart back in there. Oh no, he's gone. Okay. Well, then that we got to hold and wait. So it
Get him on the phone.
It becomes really logistically difficult. I think the other option that we have, and one that I'm not a fan of in this circumstance in Roll to Cast, is having other players put on, like players around the table, taking on NPCs, and we talked about that briefly. Predominantly because we only have like 20 episodes a season, we tend to be pretty efficient with our time. We try and be for you as an audience. And so if it's an NPC that's for a bit of a laugh, that's fine. But any kind of major NPCs are always thought out way ahead.
Yeah.
We do not want the players to not know information in advance. We don't want them to know information in advance so that there's an organic surprise. We are telling a story collaboratively, but we're also usually one person telling a story to three others and to all of you as well. That helps facilitate that storytelling convention, that podcast listening convention. And so we don't want to give a cheat sheet to a player. We also don't want them to feel uncomfortable playing an NPC that's been thrust upon them. I think that's
better for that to be the GM's problem.
Yeah, exactly.
And before we move on, we do have a live show that happens on the last weekend of every month, which is where you're much more likely to see guests. We haven't quite done it yet, but we definitely is something we've floated a little bit. So it's on the cards. So if there were to be a guest on Roll to Cast, tune in at the end of the month. You might see one.
But
there.
also, you can get that as a Patreon tier as well. If you just want to be playing the game.
You can be the guest. Yes.
Yes. Another guest that got in touch with us on the Discord, AZ.
Hey, AZ, how you doing?
A-E-Z-Y.
Easy like a Sunday morning.
AZ. Was there any situations in this season where the path the players took was significantly different to the plan?
Look, Eve dying was a bit of a
I didn't
thorn in my
plan to
side.
die.
That's basically the major one. As I said before, you're trying to funnel people towards where you want them to go. So one of the major things that I thought would happen was they'd kill the Catachan, and Eve would use her Witcher senses to find the Catachan's lair, which is like a sewer grate in the alleyway, right? That gets you down into the sewers, into the catacombs, and you can follow that trail and find Rosine, right? Boom, that's gone. None of you guys found the Catachan's lair. There were clues that if you'd roll well enough, you could have found it. I don't think you even looked for it. So I was basically like, oh crap, I don't know how to get into Rosine anymore. So that was a bit of a rough thing, but there are other ways. So eventually, if you pull the thread with Varley gets you an audience with Rosine. You get in that way. So I try to plan it such that I have contingencies.
Yeah, you have safeguards.
I have safeguards. I have multiple ways for getting them where I want to go. So it's not a railroad, and it feels organic whichever way they take. I've planned a few different possible paths.
And also, were there any moments where the game mechanics reinforced the world to an extent you did not expect? Brackets, apart from the lethality with The Witcher.
I mean, we've kind of brushed on it before, but yeah, scarcity was a big one for me. Like, I think it was a big driving thing for my character, just because witches start out with very few resources and very few means to get them. They are dependent upon getting jobs and earning that cash, and it's hard jobs, and it drives a desperation there because you just can't start out with like many good materials or money like that.
That search for materials and knowing that these alchemical things are rare and difficult, I think was really nice. It made you feel really like the world had texture. And
It literally informed why I picked my character. When we discussed in pre-production, Ellen wanted to play the Witcher character. I went, great, cool, I'll play a resource-heavy character.
Yeah. Well, you knew that there was a mage and a Witcher, didn't you?
Yeah, and so I knew that resources were going to be part of the story.
So you're going to be a man-at-arms.
I was going to be a man-at-arms. I was going to be even more dangerous in combat. No, I genuinely, I was going to play a man-at-arms. I was going to play a really, really, really minor character. I realized that with a Witcher and a mage, I absolutely had to play minor. There's no point trying to do anything else. More acting terminology.
Someone without the power.
Someone without the power, yeah. And so recognizing that mages are often well-equipped financially, but witches are not. Mages are often well-equipped financially to look after themselves. Their component spells and that sort of stuff cost a lot, as we could see with the, what was it called?
Hydromancy.
Thank you. I nearly called it Aquamancy. Aquaman. The Hydromancy is expensive, and so I knew I had to kind of round out the group. I think one of the big systems that informed setting was the character development that Ellen you talked about earlier, but that absolutely did so much work.
Completely different depending on what kind of class and thanks Chris for helping me, because creating a Witcher in the book it's like in a completely different section to creating the other characters, and it has a kind of different life path.
Yeah,
but then some things aren't clear to where they are the same as a normal life path, and it was just like, where is it? There is such variety in who you choose to play as.
Yes,
in the
exactly.
Life Path's a great system. It's in most of the RPG games. It's we love it.
Okay, so we'll jump on to Section M.
You got a few questions.
Yeah,
Right, Section M?
Let's punch through
we got
these.
something for each of these.
Yeah, beautiful.
So let's start with Ellen.
Oh.
Ellen. It is a shame we had to miss out on Eve and you at the table as well. What have you done to the dice that led you down in the fight? What are you most sad about that we did not get to see about Eve in this season? And what are you most chuffed about that you did get to do with Eve?
Would I do the dice? Nothing. That's just how dice work. It's simple. I always get a bit miffed when people are like, why are you rolling so bad? I'm like, it's literally how dice fucking work. Please don't put that upon me as a player, as if I don't have enough stress to deal with, with sorting out a game. That's why we use dice.
I love it. She's the witch. She's not superstitious at all.
No. Whereas I am. I'm very superstitious.
I do have my general ritual thing, but I know in the end it doesn't help me. But it's just a thing I like to do to make me feel like I'm prepared for a game, right?
Sure.
It's more of an aesthetic thing where I charge my dice on a sigil.
So what didn't we get to see of Eve?
God, I think I would have liked to see that character test her understanding of humanity, I suppose. And I think I would have really loved a reveal of she's the one who let Rosine
The
go.
Aurelius. Dynamic.
And why she hung around with Aurelius. Just that reveal of, because of me, your parents died, your life changed, and I'm trying to write that. That would have been a hell of a confrontation.
I'm not fighting a Witcher, or maybe I would have.
Well,
guess we'll never know.
Who knows? Yeah.
What are you chuffed that you got to show with Eve?
It's hard to think about. I always come into, I think, with recordings, always stressed and anxious, like I haven't done enough work. I feel like I did heaps of work. Because I was just looking
you often do all the work.
I was just looking at some of my notes, and these are 3 pages on sword fighting stances. You fucking nerd.
And then you just missed.
Here are some. Oh yeah, I know, right? I didn't miss. The dice
The
missed.
dice missed.
Don't blame the dice.
And having swear words in Elvish written down. So I don't know. I'm happy that hopefully there was enough that you got to see of Eve before she died, to give an impression of a character.
Before we move on, I think one of the best things we saw of Eve is that goddamn cosplay. It's so good.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So good.
Thanks.
Yeah. Go to our Twitter account if you haven't already and seen it.
It's got her scarred nose and everything.
Yeah, it's perfect.
Speaking of Chris,
Hi.
this is also from Section M.
Hi,
it
Section
seemed
M.
that Brioc had quite some internal conflict when it came to choosing loyalty to his, quotes, friends and the plight of the elves. We had seen that Brioc could be quite pragmatic when the need arose. Was Brioc assuming that Aurelius would help him after Aurelius's problems had been solved? And was this based on friendship/loyalty, or was Brioc using Aurelius to further his own cause? In short, what were the motivations of Brioc, and was the betrayal he felt at the end personal in that regard?
Great question. So to unveil part of that, the character generation that I rolled was that my personality towards other races was that elves are okay. Fuck everyone else.
Yeah.
They should be dead. Mm-hmm. And I also rolled that my character came from a noble background. Fantastic. That aligns with everything that I've got so far. Brioc is a painful pragmatist, someone who understands that he has lost a lot and should have that back. He and his people have been unfairly treated,
Dispossessed.
They have suffered, not necessarily just at the hands of people who seek to do them harm, but by people who are innocent bystanders who do not understand the suffering of others, who are fail to empathize and fail to communicate. So in terms of his quote unquote my friend, for the most part, that's all Garbo.
Yeah.
He's playing people. There's a trope which is called the indentured servant or something like that. It's actually a strategy people of color in America use to make sure that they can pass in society without being harassed and harmed, particularly popular in like the 1920s and 30s and 40s. So I saw the racial inequality there and based it off real life coping strategies.
Yeah. What about that final moment?
Final moment, he genuinely was distraught that Aurelius effectively, from his point of view, betrayed him. There was a coming around to friendship. The movement through the wraiths and down and getting lost together was that cementing. And the knowledge that they both were kind of scheming liars when the collar was revealed and the werewolf collar quality, sorry, not the collar was revealed, the werewolf quality was revealed, was like, oh, okay, you're a nightmare human being as well. You're a selfish liar and you don't trust anyone. Cool. Well, if you're willing to go this far with me, maybe you trust me now. It was a genuine moment of, I thought we were friends.
Yeah, it felt real to me.
It was a genuine moment. It wasn't a strategy. He was obviously pragmatically leveraging the mage to help with the plight of the elves.
Yeah.
But that should have been volunteered, just as Brioc volunteered himself.
Yeah.
The psychology of it, like, yes, Brioc is a selfish person and therefore thinks that by volunteering it himself, he should get it in turn.
Yeah.
But also, he helped murder someone. It should come back.
Jumping over to Sean. Hello, Sean.
Hi, Sean.
From Section M. Aurelius was incredibly driven with its mission. How much loyalty was there to the party from his point of view, and how much did he care about their motivations? Not being able to cast in the fight with the Catachan was problematic at best. Was he hiding his curse from only evil Brioc as well, who found out regardless? In the end, when Aurelius walks out, was this him walking out on his path feeling numb, or was his intention to leave Brioc? Why did he fight back when Brioc attacked? Okay, several things here. First of all, in terms of just where his loyalties lay and his motivations in terms of being with a party, he didn't really think about them in that context. There was a means to an end. Every question begins and ends at Rosine, and there are opportunities to further that goal. He has a witcher in tow who can fight. He has a merchant who is paying his way. Those are means to an end. And also, it's a world where, no one comes out clean. So he's not going to judge them, and he doesn't really give a shit whether they judge him back. He's also a character that he knows that everyone has secrets. He has them as well. So we never felt any problem with hiding the fact that he's a werewolf. He's in the company of a fucking witcher who he believes will absolutely kill him if she finds that out. So of course he's not going to reveal that. And he doesn't trust them enough to tell them either. Because in reality, he doesn't trust anyone. And why should he in the world that he lives in? And in the service of the goal that he wants to do. He trusts them as far as he can throw them. And he can throw them towards a fight, basically.
That's good.
And in terms of, in the end, a few things. Why did he fight back? He's resigned himself to the fact that this may be his last night. It doesn't mean that he's giving up. He knows that it's a possibility that he will die, but it doesn't mean he's going to go out on his back. If there's a chance that he survives, okay, great. If he dies, fine. And he's still a fucking powerful mage. But once he sees the writing on the wall and realizes, yeah, I am dead. Oh, that sounds about right. I can rest.
I think we have one more question.
We do. It's for Phil. Hey, Phil.
goody.
It's like presents around the tree.
How much did you have to adjust behind the scenes when Eve died to make it work without her? We talked a bit on that.
Yeah, we covered this a little bit.
Yeah.
While the Witcher died prematurely, the story still worked out quite well without her. Sorry, Ellen. It seems like you made sure that each character had their own motivations to continue with the story regardless of who died. Is this something you came up with in collaboration with the individual players, or did you do this behind the scenes?
So it's a little bit of both. I mean, the character motivations come from the characters, from the players who create them. And once we sort of got this idea of a mage they were hunting, and I gave them the kind of... We tend to give the players like the kind of general idea of what's happening. So like when I made Red for the guys, I was like, okay, well, this is the society you live in. This is the kind of thing you do for them. And in this case, it was like, okay, it's going to be in one city, it's going to be hunting down this rogue mage, right? This is about as much as I give them. So they can then reflexively tie that back into their stories and have motivations around it. So that way it's in collaboration. They come up with characters. I go, oh, okay, I'm going to put these characters in this situation. And then we make sure that everybody has a really nice hook there. And in terms of contingencies, the story and the events take place independently of the characters. They're just involved in them and witness them. So what you kind of didn't see that I had planned is that the longer the characters take to find Rosine, the more bold the elves get. So they begin burning guardhouses and shooting the guards as they flee. They begin poisoning supplies with their blood using the potion that Rosine gives them. And it escalates into sort of an all-out war, and then it becomes inside the city, and then it becomes like a matter of survival for the characters. They can't ignore it any longer. They have to do something about it, or they have to escape. So I sort of always have a plan for keeping the story relevant to the characters no matter what happens.
The one through Twitter that I can finally talk about, at the Over Archiver, and we've touched on this a bit, but just any final thoughts on this? Thoughts on brutal and often sudden character death.
This seems to be the topic of
Yeah.
I don't know why that is.
Oh, whack.
Well, what about you? How did you feel about it?
I felt terrible.
You could hear at the end of that episode, I'm just like, I'm so sorry.
No, I know. And I felt terrible because you felt terrible. So it added on to the terrible feeling that I was feeling. No, I play, I think, with a lot of empathy. Not only that, I think just this series gave me like much anxiety. Like listening to it even after the fact. This is a great season, and I'm so proud of all the work that everyone's done, and I think it's fucking fantastic. It's such a gripping story. I never want to listen to it again.
Great.
People lying and scheming and deceiving and betraying makes me feel a bit sick to my stomach.
Yeah.
Which can be a good thing. Like, don't get me wrong, it's very visceral. But it is visceral, and I think it hurts to see people's agency tossed aside.
Yeah.
So particularly hanging around for the death, it was a gripping moment. And I, as much as it was like, oh my God, fuck, that's it, it was a big moment. But I think it was the casual instances where Eve's personhood, which as a Witcher is always disregarded, is continued to be disregarded in death. It's just more tragic. The Witcher is a system and a setting for tragic stories. It hurts to experience a tragic story as a face and, a person who put life into a character.
Yeah.
That feels like it was very like, oh, my feelings. But like, I feel
it's
like
a real
if we
experience.
don't, I feel like if we don't put feelings into a game, then what are we doing? We're all actors, and I think we all have our own processes. But it's just like, if I create a character I don't care about, I'm not doing the best to my ability. I'm not doing the best to fulfill, I think, as an actor. I always have to care about the character, even if I don't agree or that's not how I handle things.
People love that shit in Game of Thrones, man.
Yeah.
They love that shit. The fact that people can just die at the drop of a hat is just like, people eat that up. They think it's great. Who's going to die next? What can happen? Nobody knows. And in that instance, the authors know. They plan those deaths. They happen. In a role-playing game like this, it is really often down to chance. I mean, obviously there are mitigating factors and decisions you can make, but that feeling of like it could happen at any time just gives it so much more stakes and juiciness. And the other point I wanted to make is that people really hate the inverse, is when you feel like a character has plot armor and they can't die. It's just really unsatisfying.
I'm one of those people.
You hate that?
Yeah, I hate that.
Yeah,
I love the stakes. Like, hell, and the controversial opinion, I would have been fine if someone in Mystery Down Under died. And I like that. I've just like seeing these are kids that can absolutely just die. Because
they're in peril.
They're in peril, right? But kind of onto another point that's kind of tied into this. Fuck, I relished this season to be able to just be a shitheel and just like connive and scheme and lie. And like, because also it felt like harkening back I saw a lot of parallels between this season and going mainstream in a lot of aspects. And I was also looking at the fuckery that Bob and Junk got into with one another. And it felt like there's a bit of that here. Well, there's a lot of that with Aurelius and Brioc. It felt like a going mainstream take two in a lot of ways. Like I felt like I got Aurelius right in a way that I didn't get right with Junk. Because I've said many times, I think I failed with Junk. That's just a personal thing on me and how I played him and how I understood the character. And I feel I understood it more and how to play that antagonistic role with Aurelius. I like playing the heals. They're fun.
I'm a big fan of it personally. It's the system that I grew up on, 2nd edition D&D. I played Baldur's Gate. It was one of my first games. If you step outside of the main castle and you go off the beaten path, you will die. I grew up in a working class family. The chances of failure are high. The chances of what I call slipping, where you enter into a circumstance that is kind of inescapable, where choice is taken away from you, agency is taken away from you. I grew up in that. I saw family members go through that. And so for me, playing those sorts of games where agency is taken away from players, from characters, and circumstances are put on top is something to me that has a kind of political or socio-political like force to it, and I find that really refreshing. I find that super engaging. I find that super it's why I love Vampire, because at the heart there's this horrible beast. It's why I love this game. I really love The Witcher. I have not played it before until we played it, and I love it to bits. And it's why I play in both of those games. I play a Ventrue and Vampire, and I played a Rich Merchant in this game. It's to inverse those my own personal experience and to experiment with choice. And death is the full taking away of choice, which I find really an exciting and terrifying prospect. That having choices taken away from you, having less and less choices taken away from you, less and less choices taken away from you, leads to this very dark and gritty end.
So I got 2 last questions that I think are quite fitting, actually. 2 questions from Karma. And so I'm going to go with the second question first. Phil, first of all, did you have any plans for Eve that you never got to enact? And I know we touched on this a bit. Is there anything else that you can think of?
There's more combat if The Witcher is still around. I talked a little bit about this on the Discord, that Peggy is sort of an optional fight in a way. She's probably, if you get there earlier, or if The Witcher is still with you, she might be more antagonistic or more protective, right? And it becomes another fight. I also, in one iteration of the kind of finale towards the end, I had this idea of Rosina's maybe being like a queen of monsters, and so she had like a tribe of Neckers down there that also she patronized and lived with. So there was more for The Witcher to do with her sword and more monsters for her to fight.
And this last one is more for Ellen. How would Eve have responded to meeting Rosine? Would she have taken a deal with Rosine if given an offer like Brioc and Aurelius were?
Nah, mate. Nah, like in her life path stuff, the thing she values most is her word. She already spared Rosine once. Not going to get lucky twice.
Hey.
Is that all our questions?
That is all our questions.
Wow.
Over Twitter, over Discord, and over Karma.
It's a good amount.
All I've got is another mention from the Over Archiver, which was a particular favourite moment for the Over Archiver, which is the part when Aurelius walked up to the gate, I think it was, with the elves, asked some questions, and then walked away.
Oh yes, in the street.
Yeah, in Serpent Street, where they're like, "You should leave." He's like,
I guess I am going to.
I would not have a bar of you. Yeah.
I do not want to, because I don't want to obey you, but I'm going to.
I'm doing this because I want to do this.
No, I had this idea. Me. Yeah. Oh, my goodness.
So that about wraps it up. Thank you so much for all your questions. It's been really great to see what it is that you guys have responded to and what you guys enjoyed and the bits that intrigued you. I just want to say thank you to all 3 of you as well for bringing some amazing characters and diving headfirst into the story. It was a real pleasure once again to run this story for you. And before I throw it to Chris, I will once again thank our patrons for making this podcast possible. It really is down to your support that we get to continue doing this for 6 seasons. And
a
to
movie.
tell you, 6 seasons and a movie.
Thank you so much, Phil, for running The
Yay.
Witcher for us. But you are the only 3-time champion at Rollercoaster so far.
The belt.
But as far as next week is concerned, we're not quite done with The Witcher. We have one more week. We obviously do our end of season interview with the creators, and so we have a 2-time champion coming back, which will be Cody Pondsmith. And in what we've been told is her very first podcast interview will be Lisa Pondsmith, because The Witcher is made by Pondsmith and Pondsmith.
Very exciting. It's a fantastic interview, and they were very lovely to
Yeah, so that's Ellen and myself.
to chat to us at 3:30 in the morning
Oh,
on
yeah.
our end.
Our end. Yeah.
We would never dream of asking fellow people to be interviewed to come online at 3:30 in the morning. morning.
We work hard. Stay up at 3 a.m. to do these interviews for you.
Right?
For you.
So jump into this podcast again next week to see Ellen and myself interviewing Cody Pondsmith and Lisa Pondsmith about all things Witcher and themselves. But what happens beyond that? We have the next DM, keeper, storyteller, all of the above in Chris. Chris, do you want to tell us about the next season of Roll to Cast?
Absolutely, I do. Last time I ran a game that was dark and gritty with vampires and terrible, terrible things. And we've just experienced more of that in this season. So I'm tripling down, not doubling down. I'm making it. No, I'm not. We are playing a total tonal diversion from that. We are going in a completely different direction. We're exploring the world of fantasy. We're exploring the world of youthful optimism, of changing the world for the better. We're going to a approximation of Eastern culture, an amalgamation of Eastern culture.
There you go.
We're going to Nickelodeon in the mid-2000s. We're going to Avatar. We're going to play Avatar Legends, the role-playing game. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Fresh off the Kickstarter that could.
The game just got released at the time of recording. I think we've had it for maybe a month.
Yes.
We didn't have just the jumpstart. We had the full rules.
Yes, because we had a kickstart. Got involved in that.
Yeah,
Ellen?
big old money bags McGee Ellen slapped down for the Kickstarter.
Absolutely.
Give me that. I want it first.
And we've got some fun stories to tell where it's taking place. What should I say?
Give us the title for a start.
So the name of the season is called Homeland, and it is about citizens of the Earth Kingdom defending against the Fire Nation in the 100-Year War. So 7 years before the events of Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Yeah.
So there's going to be lots of firebending, lots of young people trying to defend towns. There's going to be
Teenage melodrama.
There's going to be
maybe
lots
some
of tears.
unrequited love.
And there's going to be a new player.
Yes. For fans of ye olde Patreon bonus episodes, Zola Allen, the wonderful Zola Allen, who was on a Lunch Dates with Loki episode.
Yeah.
Talking about Prince Zuko.
So Zola is coming in for season 7. Yeah, she's our special guest star for that season. And we're really excited to have her. She's an expert in the Avatar field.
Avatarology, is it called?
Avatarology, yeah.
And an amazing actor to boot.
And an amazing actor as well. Yeah, she's fantastic. We've got 4 amazing characters and a gripping story about revenge, romance,
Justice,
family
redemption,
lines, redemption,
tradition,
truth, force, care,
And bending.
and
So much bending.
Wow.
Look, it's going to be. I think if this one was great, the next one is going to be amazing as well. I think we keep going.
Take that, Phil.
Every season is from strength to strength. I think it's every season we learn more about how we all work together. Every season we learn more about how to tell amazing collaborative stories. And the Avatar season is going to be fantastic. So make sure you're subscribed to Roll to Cast.
So that'll be dropping not next week. Again, that is the interview next week. And then the week after, we've got our episode 0. And you'll hear all about the preparation, the initial behind the scenes, what goes, anticipation right before we begin to play.
Linking our life stories together as players and as characters.
So yes, until next week, playing Aurelius Tarnair, I've been Sean.
I've been Ellen, and I was Eve of Hirsch.
I've been Chris as your friend Brioc.
And I was the GM, Phil. Bye.
Goodbye. Thanks for joining us.
You have been listening to The Blood-Soaked Rose, which is a Roll-to-Cast production. The best way to find us is on Twitter, Discord, and our Patreon. All our podcasts are on Acast, Spotify, YouTube, and all good podcatchers. You can support us on Patreon at patreon.com/roll-to-cast. The Witcher tabletop role-playing game is property of Artel Saurian Games. Used with permission.